The Titans are certainly one of those teams that you can respect. They're physical. There's a bit of old school to them. They play hard. They're relatively well coached. They don't have the most abundant star power, star presence, or big names, but they're a team that always seems to be in the mix. And we saw throughout 2021 that more and more people were getting behind this Tennessee Titans team as somebody that they viewed as a real threat and contender. And it wasn't just because of the Julio Jones trade, but more so based off of how they're playing. Especially when you look at the fact that they got into the position where they did, and Derrick Henry only played 8 games for them during the regular season. I mean, in that 8 games, he had almost 1,000 yards rushing, which is just crazy to think about. It's a beast. But the fact that they were able to go without their franchise piece, period, let alone just on offense. Derrick Henry is their franchise player. He is their best player. And they were able to navigate more than half of the regular season without him and end up in a spot where they could finish with the best record in the AFC and get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Hell yeah, they deserve a shit ton of respect for that. But they're just always going to be a hard team for me to fully embrace as true championship contenders. Because even in that 12-5, I thought, frankly, you should have been better. How the hell do you lose to the Jets and the Texans? You should easily be 14-3. But I think it comes down to that style that they play, especially offensively, will eventually lead to problems. Eventually you'll get exposed. Eventually somebody's going to be able to do something to shut down your passing game, make you one-dimensional, or shut down your running game, make you one-dimensional, and put that pressure on Ryan Tannehill and the passing attack of the Titans to have to win the game, and they're just not going to be able to do it. And while this is going to come across as just me being salty at Ryan Tannehill or wanting to hate on Ryan Tannehill, a little bit of historical context here is heading into that 2012 draft when he was coming out of Texas A&M, and the Dolphins ended up taking him 8th overall. It was technically me that had Ryan Tannehill as QB1 in that draft. Now, obviously, I was wrong, but it wasn't RG3. It wasn't Andrew Luck. It wasn't even Russell Wilson. It was Ryan Tannehill was my QB1. So you can never say that I wasn't a fan of his at all. That's bullshit. However, you've got to get to a point in time where you realize what he is and what he isn't. And he is the Alex Smith for the Tennessee Titans. He's a good quarterback that can take care of the ball generally, that can occasionally hit his spots in the passing game, but he's not a dude that you could count on to carry the team and win big games in big spots. He just fucking can, and if you think he can, you're just delusional right now. You look at that divisional round game against the Bengals. They had 2 weeks to prepare. They're the top team in the AFC. They had Derrick Henry coming back, and it didn't matter. Because once the Bengals were able to kind of sort of contain Derrick Henry, and not let him go off, the Titans were cooked. They got put into a spot where Tannehill and the Titans passing attack had to get it done, and he didn't and they didn't. He was 15-24 for 220 yards, sure, but 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. You're not going to win a whole lot of marquee playoff games putting up a Peyton Manning stat line like that. You're just not. So it's not that surprising the Bengals were able to go into Tennessee and find a way with the Evan McPherson field goal to close it out to win that game. It really wasn't. Tough spot to be in. You have the best record in the conference in the regular season, and you're 1-out in the playoffs. But you look at the regular season numbers, and it tells a bit of the story. They were top 5 running the ball, but bottom third of the league in the passing game. They led the league in time of possession, which is great. And, that's great when you've got a lead and you can play with a lead and you're trying to grind it out and you're trying to be physical and you're trying to salt away the game. Then it's great that you can control the line of scrimmage, control the time of possession. But time of possession isn't everything in the NFL. If it takes you 12, 13 plays, 75, 80 yards in order to score a field goal, and another team can hit you for 4 or 5 plays, 80 yards and a touchdown, shit, it's great that you had all that time of possession, but what the fuck did you do with it? Sometimes it's about quality of time, not quantity of time. I referenced before, it's still crazy how Derrick Henry had almost 1,000 yards rushing, was 930-something. He only played in 8 games in the regular season. The Julio Jones trade, Like, you can't exactly say that was a raging success. He played 10 games, only had like 31 catches, 400-something yards, and 1 touchdown. Bigger in name than actual impact for the team. A.J. Brown obviously is a stud, but Julio Jones, and you can't even really say those are great wide receiver 2 numbers. Tannehill's numbers in the regular season were okay, but certainly not anything special. They weren't. The defense was good. 12th in yards allowed, 5th in points allowed, so they were pretty good. Certainly, in the modern NFL, the Titans' defense was a championship-worthy unit. And even when you look at that game in the divisional round against the Bengals, they ultimately held them to 19 points, right? So it's not like the Titans didn't do their job defensively. It was offensively where they fell up short. And now this team goes into the offseason basically up against the salary cap, although, to their credit, they were able to get the Harold Landry contract extension done, so that is knocked out. Got some free agents to make a decision on, including Ben Jones, Zion Brown, and Rashaan Evans. So a couple guys off of that defense, and one of their offensive linemen, their starting center. But their needs on this team, to me, primarily at this point, are all on the offensive side of the ball. The number one team need is quarterback. But the problem is for the Titans is that they have so much tied into Ryan Tannehill. Like, I talked about this when they gave him that big contract. Like, I wouldn't do that. And they pretty much felt they were in a position where they had no other choice. Well, now you're having to live with the consequences. You reap what you sow here. So you got a shit ton of money, a $38 million cap hit tied to Ryan Tannehill in 2022, and that just feels fucking insane, doesn't it? But unless you're going to spend like a first or second round pick on one of the quarterbacks in this underwhelming quarterback class, like, you kind of got to ride with Tannehill at this point. You're not going to bring in anybody that's better, are you? I don't think so. So then you got to build up that unit around him. You need more skill talent. They need a tight end one. They don't have one. They need one in a bad, bad way. Especially when you look at Tannehill and his game, he needs somebody over the middle. He needs somebody in that intermediate area that can make a difference. When you look at wide receiver, they would tremendously benefit from having a guy that they could quickly groom to replace Julio Jones to play opposite of A.J. Brown, because Brown is an absolute stud. But once you get past that, it's not exactly a great receiving corps. It really isn't. Then you look at their offensive line and you say, okay, they just lost Roger Saffold, released him. They need a left guard that could come in and start. Then they need some offensive tackle depth because Taylor Lewan's on the wrong side of 30 now, and Quesenberry on the right side is on the wrong side of 30 as well. Like, everything about this offseason for the Titans should be about the offense. Their defense is more than good enough at this point. You don't ever want to say, I won't improve this side of the ball if the opportunity presents itself. But they should not be proactively seeking it out. They should be proactively, actively seeking out how to improve that offense. The best way to do that would be improve that quarterback. But again, that is easier said than done for them. So what do you have to do? You have to invest heavily around him and hope you give Ryan Tannehill every possible chance to succeed. Otherwise, what the Titans are going to do is continue to be what they were this past year. And once you get to the playoffs, you quickly discount them because you say they just don't have enough to get it done.